And we are live.
Awesome.
Greetings. Let's do what we normally do, which is let's like and share. Let's hit the button. We just want to welcome everyone into the throne room for our barbershop conversations. This evening, we have the pleasure of having a very special guest with myself and Ned. I'm going to just give a brief intro to him because I don't think he knows this, but if there was one man who I could say actually has made one of the greatest impacts in my life, it would be the gentleman who is going to be speaking with us this evening with regards to our acknowledgement and celebration of National Reentry Week. He is, I mean, if the brain of all brains, I think he inspires me. I don't even think he knows that he is my checkup from the neck up. When he says things to me, I literally take it as like solid gold. I got to go back and sit with it and think about what it is that God is saying to me inside of this man's words. But I am excited to be able to introduce to everyone this evening Dr. Harold Dean Trulear. He is the National Director of Healing Communities, and he's also a professor at Howard Divinity School. And I am just honored to be able to have him here with us this evening, to be able to speak about what we've been talking about for weeks now, about the strong man's journey towards their healing. Doing it from a perspective this evening, talking about those who have actually encountered the criminal justice system. So thank you and welcome, Doc, to the throne room inside of our barbershop conversations. We welcome you this evening.
Jackson and friend brother Ned.
Good.
Definitely glad to have you on, Doc.
Yeah. So everyone
Thank
who
you.
is watching, we just ask that you just like and share. Don't forget, we love to be able to hear any of the comments. We like to hear any and read any of your thoughts, concerns, questions. Feel free to join us in that conversation. I'm sure that we'll have a great time this evening. Let's just get started, Doc. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to kind of get to know who you are. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about Healing Communities.
Sure, we can do that. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I went to prep school. I went to Morehouse College. PhD from Drew University. Fast track, professional excellence, and a couple side trips kind of landed me in this whole subject of especially the justice system. First was that I had a partner with the court adjudicated youth in Patterson, New Jersey. And I got a side of the juvenile justice system that I hadn't had before with men. And then secondly, in 1990, I went to New York Law Seminary in Manhattan as the Dean of First, and NYTS was one of the first, if not the first seminary to offer. So I ended up teaching in their master professional program at Sing Sing prison, upstate New York. And then I went from there to a research position with a place called Public-Private Ventures, which was working on interventions in the faith community to reduce juvenile crime violence. And all the while, I was developing a habit of talk. studying the system. I'm in the system. Like prison, inmate number 1002648. That's how I got the nickname Doc, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Most people call me Dean. Just call me Dean. And they said, we can't do that, Dr. Trulear. We know it's outside. And I said, man, you can't call me Dr. Trulear in here, the CO field day. They said, well, we can't call you Dean. So I said, call me Doc. That's short for Dr. Trulear. So, this is not a preacher name. This was the name, the other guy that I was locked up with in Unit 12 at the George W. Hill. And so then,
Dean, I don't mean to cut you off or interject, but we're having some feedback and some lag here that we got back notification of. And so I just wanted us to, if you could, I don't know if you can check your internet or where you are, if there's just a transition that we can make so that we can clearly hear you. It's just a little choppy coming through. Or even if you have your phone, I don't know if you have a phone. Are you working through your phone or? Yeah.
I'm on my.
Yeah. Guys, thank you for just hanging in there 1 second. We want to make sure that you get to hear all of the good things that Doc is saying because he has a phenomenal story and we don't want you guys to miss it. I don't want you to miss not even a teardrop of it. So if you could just give us 1 second while we work out the wonderful technology that we have before us, I'm sure we'll get it going. While Doc is trying to figure that piece out, Brother Ned, I'm going to just jump in there and just ask you a question or two with regards to what it is that you have, where your heart and your placement is within this whole national reentry. What do you see value in our conversation and having conversation around reentry?
Oh, well, I see extreme value in it, to be honest with you. We're talking about human life. And so whenever we're talking about that commodity, it's valuable. And so a lot of our brothers and sisters who, because of whatever circumstances they may have fallen into, does not exempt them or take them away from the value that they can bring to our communities. So this conversation of reentry is important to all of us and extremely important to me because it definitely brings back resources to our communities that are greatly needed.
Absolutely. Dean, I see you, Doc. I see you're back here. So let's hear you.
Is this better?
Oh my gosh, 120%. I'm so glad because I was gonna be like, we gotta figure this out. We gotta do this because we're gonna hear what my Dean got to say. Okay. All right, Doc. So go ahead and just tell us a little bit more about who you are and talk to us about healing communities in that space.
Well, after my time in the criminal justice system, because of my alcoholism and DUIs, my research interest in faith in the criminal justice system switched over to something personal.
Mm-hmm.
And, working with the Annie E. Casey Foundation and the Progressive National Baptist Convention, we started a movement called Healing Communities USA, where our goal was to equip and support houses of worship doing prisoner reentry, but with the unique approach of starting with the families that are in the house of worship that have somebody that's in the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
Every congregation has people that come week after week that have sons and daughters, parents and siblings, and spouses that are in the criminal justice system. And we believe that just like the church, for example, has a sick and shut-in list based on its membership, that ministering with men and women who are coming through the system should have the same kind of connection. As one of the pastors we work with, Dr. Buster Soares in New Jersey, said, I was doing outreach to the prison and stepping over every family in my church that had somebody locked up to go work with the son.
Wow.
So
wow.
we're using the congregation as a starting point and giving people tools to create the kind of atmosphere where they can self-disclose. Because if I've got a son that's in prison or jail, I'm going through a sense of grief, a sense of loss. Psychologists call it disenfranchised grief. And disenfranchised grief is simply a sense of loss that nobody will talk about, that nobody will.
Right.
Mhm.
And so we believe that congregations can be places where families can heal. And then as those families heal, they can provide healing for their member. They can be part of the healing for their family member who is currently incarcerated. And so we've been doing this now since 2007. One of the things that I can say about the model is we one of the things we do is that we challenge churches to give altar calls for families of the incarcerated.
Mm.
Have some sacred
Okay.
safe space to come forward and prayer, cry, whatever. And since 2007, we started doing this work almost 14 years ago. We have never had an empty altar.
Wow.
Black church, white church, rich church, poor church, Latino church, suburban church, urban church, rural church. The smallest number we've ever had come to the altar was 9. And that was in the church,
Wow.
12 people there that Sunday. And the largest number we had was a mega church in Maryland where we had 400 people come to the altar for prayer because they had a family member that was incarcerated at the time. So what we're trying to do is make sure that congregations are safe spaces for families to self-disclose, and then the families can provide a link to their family member or their loved one who's locked up. For example, when I was locked up, those guys that called me doc, they had been members of the church I used to pastor. That's why they couldn't call me dean. That's why they kept calling me Dr. Trulear, and I said, you can't do that. Well, these were to me kids because they're young enough to be my sons. These are kids who, whose mothers I pastored, whose cousins I pastored, right? I had no idea that the people coming to my church Sunday after Sunday had people in the criminal justice system.
Wow.
And so I remember one guy comes up to me and he says, Trulear, how you related to the pastor at Mount Pleasant? Guy used to be at Mount Pleasant. And he, of course, starts talking to me. So I said, well, that's my wife's husband. He said, oh. They said, oh, you mean you? So, well, yeah. I said, it's on you coming at me all cross-eyed, and I don't, And he said, well, I do have a bone to pick with you. And then he told me that he was upset with me because his wife divorced him while she was at the church, and he wanted to see me, and the guardians of the church wouldn't let him see me because he hadn't paid his church dues. And I said, well, you've been around me for a little bit now. Do you think I would say something like that? He said, no, I don't think so. I said, good. So you know that was not my idea. I had no idea.
Right.
So at any rate, I had all these connections with these guys that were in there, and it just confirmed in my mind and in my heart that every church, every synagogue, every masjid, every temple is already connected to the criminal justice system by virtue of incarceration, probation, parole. There are 9 million Americans right now who are under some form of correctional supervision.
Wow.
Jail, probation, parole, halfway houses, home electronic monitoring. 9 million Americans, as we speak, are under some form of criminal justice supervision.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
So this is really important to you. And inside of that, what I heard all across that was the criminal justice system and pain, grief has no prejudice against color, skin, age, demographic, geographic. It reaches every corner and every space.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say no prejudice because we're disproportionately represented, but
come on, Doc. You always do this to me. Go ahead. You're right. Go ahead. Teach the people. Teach me.
We are disproportionately represented, but when I spoke at a conference in Pittsburgh of college students, mostly white. In fact, there was only one black kid there. And so I talked about this issue, and one of them said to me, well, how do we help the black church? I said, no, you've got people like this in your church. This is not the black church issue. He said, oh, no, nobody like that in my church. I said, what church do you go to? He said, I'm a law student at Georgetown University. I said, what church do you go to? He said, Georgetown Presbyterian Church. Now you can't make this stuff up. This was a Saturday. Guess where I had spoken that Sunday before?
Georgetown.
I was just at your church Sunday. Do you want names?
Wow.
You know, I talked with mothers who were crying over their sons because with the growth in drug trafficking and the opioid explosion, right? The so-called crisis. I call it, people call it the opioid crisis. My little joke is they call it the opioid crisis because now Opie's getting high. Opie.
Doc, you're so wrong.
The war on drugs.
It hit Mayberry, Doc, and that's why it's an issue.
Yeah, because Opie's getting high down in Mayberry, so now it's a health crisis, right?
Right.
So, at any rate, but you know, kids from Georgetown go to jail, right? So yeah, it touches everybody, and so we've been trying to, you know, I spoke at a white evangelical college. I won't call the name of it because of what I'm about to disclose. Several years ago, and I didn't do the altar call per se, but I had people stand up. I got there the chapel was on a Wednesday. I landed there on a Tuesday. This was a very prestigious, theologically conservative, predominantly white college. And what I did not know when I landed on Tuesday was that Monday, the local police had been on campus and arrested a graduate student for cyberbullying. He had put little cameras in the women's shower in the undergraduate dormitories. And so everybody knew somebody because everybody knew this kid.
Right.
And so when I asked folks to stand up, most of the auditorium stood up. There's no real difference between black and white behaviors, right? Our neighborhoods are policed differently, and so we get caught more. But our neighborhoods, but in fact, at that conference with the white college students, I just asked them, I said, how many of you Christian, because you're all Christians at this conference, know where to buy drugs on your campus? And everybody put their hand.
Amazing.
There's no difference in behavior. There's a difference in policing and a difference in sentence.
Yeah.
That's good. So Doc, in barbershop conversations, we generally take this as an opportunity to really focus on men. And what I want to kind of do is kind of hone this in, and I know that this is often done this way, but I really want to look at it from a little different angle, more so talking about the healing that is needed for a man who has been convicted or incarcerated or that's returning back into society. What would you say are the needs of this man, and what does it differ from any other person? Is it something that's, when you talk about the discrepancies and the different things that happen between the Black disproportionate communities with the Black community, are there certain things or needs that you see that men need in separate spaces in order to heal or overcome in this era?
Sure. The first thing I need to say is that we need a complete overhaul of the prison and jail system, because having a punitive prison and jail system does more harm than good. And so we're trying to learn, some jurisdictions are trying to learn from Norway and Germany and Holland and other places where rehabilitation is put at the center of incarceration as opposed to punishment. So we have people that are coming through the system that are being made worse because of the conditions there and the lack of programming and living in cages, which, by the way, is made worse by COVID because there's so much human isolation. That said, given the current system, here's what we know: that people for healing really need several things. One thing they need is a sense of belonging. They need community. One of the things that we've known for almost 50 years, since Louis Jablonski's book, The Violent Gang, appeared in 1965, is that gangs, for example, arise in the absence of strong nuclear families because we are born with an innate desire to be connected. What my friend Chris Mogensen at the chaplain at the Broome County Jail in his dissertation at Northeastern Seminary It's called a sense of belonging. So I need something to belong to. I need a community to belong to in order to heal. It's one of the fundamental tenets of the recovery movement. That's why people have AA meetings and NA meetings, because they belong to something, and they have sponsors because they're being meant recovery, right? So we have a fundamental need to belong. Let me further illustrate it. A man who tells you that he doesn't need you needed you to hear him say he didn't need you. Otherwise, he just walk away.
You just walk away, right?
I don't need you. Yes, you do. You needed me to hear you say that, right?
Right.
So we are created to be in community, right? So number one, men need to feel like they belong. Your broadcast is called the Barbershop. What is the Barbershop in the Black community?
Right.
It's a place where people belong.
It's a place of community.
Place of community, right? What is the bar, right? It's not for people who want to get drunk. It costs too much. I know. I'm becoming alcoholic. Why would I spend the same amount of money on a shot than I would on a half pint, right? So what the TV show says it all. You want to go where everybody knows your name. You want to go where they're always glad you came.
Right.
That's what the bar is, right? That's what gangs are, a sense of belonging. And so we have to provide a sense of belonging and a sense of community for coming through the system and be present for them when they come out. All right. Second thing that they need is a sense of purpose, right? And a sense of purpose is that I'm going somewhere, that I'm important in the general scheme of things, that I need to be a contributor to society and not a person who makes society worse because of my behavior, right? So having a purpose and being able to respond to issues rather than just react. Okay, I teach a class in DC jail, and I have a student that said to me, "Well, you know, I sold drugs because I didn't have any choice." I said, "Yeah, you do have a choice." And so he said, "No, I had no choice, man. And, you know, this was closed, that was closed, no jobs, blah blah blah." I said, "Well, let's explore that, right?" You're a Princeton graduate, so you remember the concept of moral agency, right?
Right. Yes.
So the capacity to choose, and he said he had lost his capacity to choose, and so he had to sell drugs. I said, no, let's explore that. I said, I'm not saying that you could have gone to school or gotten a white collar job or any of those things, but even within the context of criminalized behavior, you had a choice. You chose to sell drugs. You could have been a carjacker, sold the parts. You could have been a bank robber. You could have been a burglar. You know, there are all kinds of options, right, within those behaviors that are criminalized from which to choose. You chose selling drugs. So obviously the idea that somebody has no choice, they may have limited choices, but the idea that you have no choice is something that we've got to explode. And when I work with the guys at the DC jail, the Alexandria Detention Center, in the ethics class, we start with this concept of moral agency and philosophical anthropology. What does it mean to be human? One of the things that means to be human is to have choices and to not be defined by my social situation, be able to transcend someone else's expectation, right? This is all you're ever going to be. All you can be is a drug dealer. So a guy said to me, look, when I get out of here, I give myself a month. And if I can't get a job, I got to go back to slinging because all I know how to do is sell drugs. So I said, no, you don't. You know how to sell. You just got a bad product. Maybe we can set you up in sales, multi-level marketing. I mean, drug dealing is marketing, right? Like Amway and Tupperware and all that stuff. It's multi-level marketing. So you know how to multi-level market. In fact, you probably know how to multi-level market better than some folk because you're in a business where if you make a mistake, it can cost you your life. Right? Your math tight. So let's see if we can set you up selling energy or selling travel or selling, you know, any of a number of things that are part of multi-level marketing products. So I need a sense of purpose. The third thing I need is a man needs is the capacity to think things through.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
one of the things that we noticed in criminalized behaviors, and I'm using it that way because a lot of behaviors that are criminalized today weren't criminalized 40 years ago,
Right.
is that there's a tendency to act impulsively. And so you try to sit down with men and get them to think through the consequences of their action. If I do this, then this is likely to happen, this is likely to happen. Okay? Think through to the consequence. When Von Braun ran the DC jail, when Von Braun, who ran the DC jail, was in charge of one of the state prisons in New Jersey, he instituted a chess program for the men who lived in his prison. The reason he established a chess program is because the only way you can be successful in chess is to think ahead. Checkers, you can be reactionary. Chess, you have to think ahead. To learn how to think ahead, plan your next move 3 and 4 and 5 moves ahead, because many of them had become victims of impulsive behavior. And so he was providing activities which forced them to think through situations to their logical consequence, right? So the capacity to think ahead. Cognitive behavioral therapy is being used in a number of prisons now for release, right? Being able to think differently about, so I can make a different decision about how I respond, right? Not respond out of my emotions, but respond out of a sense of consequence and what is the right thing to do. So that shift in my mindset away from impulsivity to thinking things through is another critical component, and having a community that nurtures me in that, right? That sense of belonging,
Right.
things through, right? That's the same thing we do in 12-step movement. Your sponsor or other people in your group in NA is there to support you in this radical mind shift that you're making as you move away from drugs and alcohol into sober living. And so belonging, purpose, shift in mindset from impulsivity, those are all critical components that we can provide for men who are moving through the system. And I would say, in closing to that, it has to start before they come home.
Right.
All the research says you've got to start at least 6 months before an individual's release if you're going to help them to make these shifts in their attitude, and if you're going to provide the kind of community for them that they can trust when they come home. Because one of the things that men are looking for as they move through the system and come home is somebody they can trust.
Absolutely.
Right? Not some do-good church person who says, "Oh, I'm here to help," so they can break their arm, pat themselves on the back, saying, I'm a person. But somebody who's willing to build a relationship that is characterized by trust.
Doug, I'm going to go back to something that you said, because my passion is with our youth. And so you said something with regards to when you were talking about the capacity to think things through and cognitive behavioral skills and things. And so the immediate thing that came to my mind was, wow, they have to work with adults around impulsivity issues and things. But yet we are still in a time and era whereby we are incarcerating and charging our children to adult systems inside of adult systems. I'm thinking about even our ability or even their capacity to be able to have their reasoning skills developed and things like that. This is the part about it that makes me angry, right? When I hear things like this and statistics like this that really talk about what we need to do for our adults, but we have yet to have the opportunity to give our children those things. And so I just kind of wanted to get your take on what that part of the process might look like for our youth, or even in their own healing for the youth community who have been a part of the adjudicatory process.
All somebody has to do is to come down here to Washington, D.C. and take a look at the juvenile justice system here, which is, Youth and Family Services, overseen by a man named Clinton Lacey, who cut his teeth in New York, working with some good people up there. And has instituted a basic tagline for working with youth in the system in the District of Columbia.
Mm.
This is the line: what does love look like in public policy?
Wow.
Clinton will only hire people to work in the adolescent detention centers who are willing to love kids. Not punish them, but love them. And I talked to the supervisors, and he said, when Clinton came, he said, "You mean you're going to pay me to love these kids?" And he said, "Yes." And they replaced the punitive, retributive justice system with a restorative justice, to the point where their flagship detention center, which is out in Laurel, Maryland, New Beginning, had a decrease in population because the recidivism rate was going down, and the District of Columbia said to Clinton, "Well, if your program works with these low-level offenders, we're going to send you the Title IX guys from the D.C. jail, the violent offenders. We're going to send them over to New Beginnings." And you know, I haven't been able to go in since COVID, but when I took my class in there last in 2019, you'd have thought you were on campus, and these were all men and women with violent convictions, who had been, most of whom had been tried as adults and were sitting in the DC jail awaiting sentencing into the federal system. But they have employed a restorative justice approach, that their job in the criminal justice system with adolescents is to help restore them and not just punish them, because they understand that these are still human beings. You know, as a Christian, I put it this way: they're still creating the image of God. And, you know, if you're going to dismiss somebody because, if you're going to dismiss their humanity because they've killed somebody, then you've got to get rid of David, who
Right.
friend's husband killed. You got to get rid of Moses, who killed
Right.
the overseer. Peter pulled a knife on a cop in the Garden of Gethsemane. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, if Peter had done that today, Jesus would have had to perform 2 miracles: heal the cop's ear and raise Peter from the dead. Paul put hits out on Christians before he became converted. You know, so a person's criminalized behavior certainly doesn't disqualify them from service. Jeremiah was in solitary confinement. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were on death row, and Daniel was a 2-time loser. And the children of Israel don't get into the promised land without a sex worker named Rahab. So if you're a Christian and you're writing people off because of their behaviors, you're really in the wrong religion. Jesus died in custody.
Yeah.
And I put on my Facebook page yesterday, I think you saw this, Monica, that the resurrection was a reentry.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
All right. That's right.
Resurrection was reentry. So since this is National Reentry Week, I feel privileged to serve a God who experienced incarceration and execution on my behalf. But on the 3rd day, he got early release. Don't make me shout.
Come on now.
Early release.
Sunday's coming. Come on now. Well, since you talk about it and you put it out there, I think the other thing you had talked about was even Paul had a hard time getting back into the church after he had been released. And so my question then becomes, what is the church's role and responsibility in helping these men and families heal? What is it that we should be doing? And I know you talked about that. What does love look like in public policy? But as Christians and believers, we continue to pronounce this thing of love, but have yet to really understand what that really means and hold it true. I want to challenge people to really look at this from a better perspective. And so I asked that question to you, Doc. What is the church's responsibility in all this?
Starting point is to put a face on the issue, right? We're not mass incarceration or social injustice or any of that at the entry level into working in this space. Starting point is the face of for us in healing communities, it's the face of the mother or the father or the child who comes to church every week with an incarcerated parent or an incarcerated kid or incarcerated grandparent. Churches don't get involved in social justice unless there's a face on it. The civil rights movement had Rosa Parks, and then it had Martin, right? So it's not, you don't go into a church and say, we're 5% of the world's population, we got 25% of the world's prisoners. That doesn't move people. When you start naming names of people, that's why I give my inmate number whenever I speak, right? So this
Right.
when you start naming names, when you do that altar call for family incarcerated, and people come forward and you realize that the woman who sits next to me every Sunday in the choir has a son who's incarcerated, or you realize in one case that the pastor had told us that her husband had gotten a new job and was working on Sundays. And it was in the altar call that they found out, no, he's got a 6-year bid for burglary.
Wow. Wow.
And so, it puts a face on it. So we got to put a face on it if we're going to be mobilizing people. And then along with the face comes what my colleague Darren Ferguson calls the human element. That every human being is created in the image of God. And so we're rejecting labels like convict and prisoner, and felon. We're using person-centered language like incarcerated people, men and women who've been incarcerated, or justice-involved people, right?
Right.
When people come home, they're not ex-offenders, they're not ex-felons, they're returning citizens, or they're formerly incarcerated people. We're trying not to define them by their past, but by their present. So we need to see them as human beings created in the image of God. And that's why I mentioned all those people in the Bible who, either went to prison or could have gone to prison based on their behaviors. The third thing we can do is, once we've done that, we need to reach out to the jails, not to do more prison ministry, not to show up with a Bible, but to show up and build relationships. Find out where son is, find out where Deacon Jones' daughter is, and start reaching out to them while letting Deacon Jones and Sister Brown know that we love them and that we're walking with them in spite of the fact that, not in spite of the fact, but because of the great sense of loss that they have. And so we build this relationship. So that's the starting point. Finding ways to be a blessing. Let me give you a couple examples. My old church in Philadelphia, a little storefront. Here's what one of the things they've done. They have a woman there whose husband is locked up, and so she can't afford the phone calls home, right? So another woman in the church, she can't afford the phone calls home. So she told the younger woman, come over my house every Wednesday at 8:00 and have your husband call me collect from the prison. And I'll accept the charges and hand you the kids the phone, and you can talk to him for him.
Wow.
Right? So keeping that family connected during the period of incarceration.
Wow.
Prison ministry and never showing up at the prison. Right?
Right.
Yep.
We can give rides to people who want to go visit a son or a daughter or a grandchild that's incarcerated, but they live too far away for me to go. Right? So the church can give them a ride. We can put money in people's books. A church in Philadelphia that gets, once they get an incarcerated person's name, they get their birthday, anniversary, the mother's birthday, who's a member of the church, and they put money on that person's books around every holiday and every birthday so they can call home.
That's good.
Right? Because what they're doing is remember, need a sense of belonging.
Keeping it together.
Keeping people together. I know a church that sends the bulletin out every Sunday. Once they get the list of people, they send the church bulletin out. When I was incarcerated, there was a lady in my church who wrote me a letter every Sunday night. I would get it every Tuesday or Wednesday, saying, this is what I preached on Sunday. So I was able to keep up with all the sermons. And she would write it out and just mail it to me every week.
That's good.
Wednesday, and I know what pastor preached. But it was staying connected and letting me know that I still had a community to belong to. And when I came home, my first Sunday home, there was a big sign across the back of the church saying "Welcome home," and they had a reception after church.
Wow,
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's good.
that's the
And
relationship building stuff.
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah, seeing people as people.
Yeah.
I like that. As we wrap up, Doc, I'm going to ask you if there was one thing that you wanted to kind of leave out there with the man today who is re-entering society and still kind of struggling with the after effects of being incarcerated. What would it be that you would like to impart, or wisdom that you would like to share with them?
Find a supportive community that
Mm.
believes in your capacity to change. Find a
Mm,
community that believes in your capacity to change. That
Mm.
could be a support group for returning citizens. If you had a drug or alcohol problem when you went in, that could be NA or AA or Celebrate Recovery. That can be a house of worship that is skilled in working with men and women coming home. And we have a list on our website, healingcommunitiesusa.com. We have a list of congregations from all over the country that have been doing this work, and I would be willing to welcome you on the journey home. But don't try to do it by yourself.
Mm.
Don't focus on not going back to jail, but focus on purpose and where you're headed. And make sure that you are thinking things through and your decisions through. You do have choices. You do have the
Huge.
capacity to choose to do other than what got you there. It was funny because Sister Jackson was talking about how smart I am, and this saying in the 12-step movement, my best thinking got me a seat in the whatever the fellowship. No matter how smart I am, I need a community to help me and
Yeah.
make the kind of decisions that keep me out of jail, that keep me out of the psych ward, that keep me out of rehab, that keep me out of the ER, that keep me out of detox.
Mm.
I've been to all 5, and I won't tell you all how many times. I need
all
something
right.
else to help me. As a friend of mine said, I don't go upstairs by myself.
Mm.
Right.
I take somebody with me.
Always.
Yep.
Mm,
And
that's
and it's biblical,
right.
because God said it is good, it is good, it is good. Then he says it's not good that the man should be alone.
That's right.
Mm,
We are created to be in community. So my basic, if I had to leave one thing, find a supportive community. You can go on our website. We'll help you find one no matter where you are in the country. Healingcommunitiesusa.com. We've got a list of chapters. We can help you find a supportive community so that you're not trying to do this thing by yourself. I tell church folk, the Lone Ranger's name was Lone, but he had Tonto.
that's right. That's right.
Living by itself.
Yeah, he even though he was the Lone Ranger, he had help. So supportive community, absolutely critical.
I thank you for your time this evening, Doc. I really appreciate you being willing to share with us any of the and all of the insights that you have around what it takes for a community to come together and to help people see people as people and transition into
Yeah.
community. And so I just want to give an extra special shout out to you for continuing to promote and push this journey and all of the efforts that you are continuing to do across the nation with just using your voice and your experience and as your witness to how good God is, but most importantly, how much we are needed, each individual person and organizations, we are needed in making this thing happen. So again, thank you for your time. And Brother Ned, as always, you know, you it.
Listen, I appreciate that. I'm just thankful that I was able to be here and enjoy this moment. I mean, as I said at the beginning, I was looking forward to learning and hearing some information that I can hopefully share and spread. And I got that tonight. So I'm thankful, Dr. Trulear, that you were on with us tonight and put some really important pieces of the puzzle on the table for us to be able to utilize as tools. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Doc, if people want to get to you, how can they get to you? If they want to hear more about this Healing Communities effort, what can they do to reach you and get you to, you said you speak everywhere and you've been at churches and different groups. Tell the people how they can reach you.
We have a website, which is www.healingcommunitiesusa, all one word, healingcommunitiesusa.com. They go on the website and click on contact us. They can send an email that will go to our operations director and then through her to me. It's Dr. Denise Struthers, who does a wonderful job with our website and also directing our YPC ministry. And so healingcommunitiesusa.com, click on contact us, send an email, and you'll hear back from us within 24 hours.
That's great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys for visiting us in the Throne Room. Royalty Mission Network also asks that you like and share. Please get the word out. We want this message to be spread all across the world, right? We want people to know what they can do in order to help greet and welcome our returning citizens and help them feel that sense of belonging that they need so that they can become and continue to be contributing members of society. If you have any questions and needs to want to reach out to us, please connect with us at royaltynetwork.net, or you can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of the above, active YouTubes, all of those technologies platforms that are out there. You can connect with us. But join us again in 2 weeks for Barbershop Conversations. We'll be back at it again, me and Brother Ned, at 5 p.m. We look forward to seeing you there so that we can take the cover off. Remember, we created this space just for you to be able to purge from your issues, heal from your wounds, so that you might find rest, so you can transform into that which you have been created and called to become, and that is royalty. Have a nice evening, guys.
Take care.